"I'm checking in for the presidential suite," George said. "The name is Palmer. George Palmer." He pushed his credit card across the smooth stone desk. He gave the nice receptionist, Anna, a big, confident smile. The woman next to him, Sabrina, squeezed his arm. Her red dress shined under the giant, bright lights. He knew she was excited, and it made him feel strong. He felt like a king. "Oh, yes, Mr. Palmer," Anna said, her eyes getting a little wider. "And I see you used our friend of the family code. That's great." "My wife, Patricia," George said. The lie came out very easily. "She works for the company. She is stuck at a boring meeting in Chicago all week. Poor thing." Anna smiled. "Well, we have a new rule for special guests. Our new boss wants to meet you. Let me just—" "Oh, here she comes now." George felt very proud. He winked at Sabrina. He was a very important person. Then he heard a noise behind him. It was the sound of high heels walking on the hard floor. A voice spoke. It was a voice that should not be in this city. It was a voice he thought was far away. "That's okay, Anna. I know this guest." George froze. He could not move. He felt suddenly cold and sick. Very slowly he turned his head. It was his wife, Patricia. But she looked very different. She wore a dark blue suit that made her look very, very powerful. Her eyes were cold. She was not looking at him. She was looking at the receptionist. Patricia?" he asked. His voice was shaky. The woman in the blue suit finally turned to look at him. Her eyes stared right at him. She had a small, scary smile on her face. Then she said the words that ruined his life. "Welcome to my hotel, George." How? His mind was spinning. This was not possible. He was supposed to be fooling her. He always thought she was just a boring woman who worked too much. He had planned this so perfectly. Let me take you back to where it all began. But first of all, welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're listening, hooked, and already enjoying the story, please hit subscribe. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love seeing our community around the world. Tomorrow I'm dropping another sweet story, so don't miss it. And the first 4 people to comment with their real names will be featured in our next story. Now let's continue. The black leather seats of his luxury sedan were cool against his back. George drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, a smug grin on his face. The car was a beast, powerful and quiet, and it made him feel powerful, too. He glanced at the woman in the passenger seat. Sabrina Cohn. She was, in his mind, perfect. She was 25, 10 years younger than his wife. Her hair was a bright, sunny blonde. Her laugh was a high, tinkling giggle. And today, she was wearing a sparkling red dress that was so tight, he could barely think straight. She was excitement. She was passion. She was everything his wife, Patricia, was not. "I still can't believe we're doing this, George," she giggled, her hand sliding up his thigh. "The Grand Regent. On a Tuesday. Aren't you scared your wife will find out?" George let out a low, confident laugh. "Patricia? Don't be silly. Right now, she is sitting in a cold, stuffy conference room in Chicago. She's at her final leadership seminar. She's been working toward this for a year." He rolled his eyes. Boring. For 15 years, his wife had been the most predictable part of his life. She was a workaholic. She lived for her job in hotel management. She was always climbing the ladder, one slow, careful, boring step at a time. While she was busy checking spreadsheets and managing housekeeping staff, he was busy living. He had met Sabrina at his firm. She was new in the marketing department. She looked at him with big, adoring eyes. She made him feel like the man he deserved to be. Not just Patricia's husband. Their lies had been so easy. "I have to stay late at the office, honey," he had told Patricia over breakfast last week. This new client is a killer. I'll be working all week to close the deal. I'll probably be sleeping on the couch in my office." She had just nodded, her eyes already on her laptop, her mind already in Chicago. "Okay, George. That's fine. My seminar is the whole week anyway. I fly out Monday. I'll see you Friday night." "Perfect," he'd said, kissing her on the forehead. "Have a great trip. Learn a lot." It was perfect. A whole week. No questions. No check-ins. Just an open field for him and Sabrina. And then, just last night, he had his most brilliant idea. The one that made him grin right now, as he turned the car onto the grand, tree-lined street that led to the hotel. Patricia, with her long, dull career, had one amazing perk: a friends and family employee discount code. It worked for the entire global hotel chain. It gave a massive 50% off the best available rate. The Grand Regent was the most expensive, most exclusive hotel in the city, a place he could never normally afford. The presidential suite, a room that normally cost $5,000 a night, was suddenly in his grasp, using his wife's discount to pay for his weekend with his lover. It was, in his mind, the cleverest, funniest thing he had ever done. It made him feel powerful. It made him feel smarter than her. After 15 years, he thought, her hard work was finally paying off. For him. "But George," Sabrina said, her voice a little nervous as the giant hotel came into view. "Using her discount? What if they call her? What if they check?" "Sweetheart, that's not how it works," he said, patting her hand. "She's a manager. They trust her. The code is automatic. They won't call anyone. They'll just see the code and treat us like royalty." He winked. "Trust me. She is so buried in her seminar. She won't even look at her email. By the time she gets the bill, we'll be long gone. I'll just tell her I had to entertain the client. She'll believe me. She always does." Sabrina relaxed, giggling again. "You're so bad, George." "I know," he said, pulling the car up to the front entrance. "That's why you like me." The Grand Regent was not just a building. It was a palace. It was a tower of white stone and gleaming glass that shot up into the sky. Giant, 20-foot-tall glass doors stood open. Doormen in smart gray uniforms moved with silent, expensive-looking speed. The driveway was filled with cars that made his sedan look cheap. A valet, young and quick, opened Sabrina's door before George had even put the car in park. She stepped out, and the doorman nodded at her. George got out, feeling like a movie star. He tossed his keys to another valet. "Take good care of her," he said, slapping a $50 bill into the man's hand. The valet didn't even smile. He just nodded. "Of course, sir." George put his arm around Sabrina's waist. Her body was warm against his. He guided her up the wide marble steps, through the spinning glass doors, and into the lobby. He stopped, just for a second, to take it all in. The lobby was bigger than a basketball court. The ceilings were 50 feet high, and from them hung 3 massive chandeliers that looked like waterfalls of frozen light. The floor was a sea of polished black and white marble. In the center of the room, a giant vase held a display of white lilies, so large it must have cost thousands of dollars. The air smelled of those lilies, lemon polish, and the faint, unmistakable, clean scent of old money. Quiet piano music drifted from a lounge he couldn't see. He felt the eyes of the other guests on them. A well-dressed older couple. A group of businessmen in dark suits. They saw him, a man in a sharp suit with a beautiful young woman on his arm. They were looking at him with respect, with envy. This was where he belonged. He squeezed Sabrina's hand. "See? Perfect. It's amazing, George," she breathed, clinging to his arm. He walked them to the long, dark, polished wood reception desk. It was so long, for different receptionists could work at once. He chose the one in the middle, a pretty young woman with a bright, welcoming smile. Her name tag read Anna. "Good afternoon, sir, ma'am," she said, her voice polite and warm. "How can I help you today?" George leaned on the counter, feeling smooth and cool. "Checking in," he said, his voice low. "The name is Palmer. George Palmer. I believe I have the presidential suite." Anna's eyes widened, just a little. That was the reaction he wanted. She typed his name into the computer. "Oh yes, Mr. Palmer. I have your reservation right here. For 2 nights. The presidential suite." "Wonderful." Her smile grew even brighter. "And I see you've used our friend of the family code. How wonderful. Who do you work with at our company?" George felt a thrill. This was the best part of the lie. "My wife," he said, his voice full of fake pride. "Patricia Palmer. She's in management. A regional director, I think. She's in Chicago right now, actually, at that big leadership conference." "Oh, how lovely," Anna said, clearly impressed. She seemed to type something, her smile never fading. "We are so glad to have you." She took his credit card, the one he always used, the one Patricia paid the bill for. "Now, Mr. Palmer," Anna said, her voice full of professional cheer. "Because you are using a VIP code and you are booked in our very best suite, we have a new policy." George's chest puffed out. A new policy. For him. "Our new general manager is very hands-on," Anna continued, "and she is asked to personally greet all our VIP guests on her first day. She'll be so thrilled to meet you. Let me just give her a call." "Oh wait, I don't even have to." "How perfect." Anna looked up, past George's shoulder, and smiled. "Ma'am, over here." George grinned, feeling important. He felt Sabrina squeeze his arm in excitement. He was the man. He was getting a personal greeting from the boss of the biggest, baddest hotel in the city. He prepared to shake the woman's hand, to give her his best, most charming smile. He heard a sound behind him. It was the sharp, clear, confident sound of high heels on the marble floor. It was a sound he knew as well as his own heartbeat. But it was impossible. A cold, familiar voice cut through the air. A voice that had no business being in this city, in this hotel, in this moment. "That won't be necessary, Anna. I know this guest." George's smile did not fade. It froze, cracked. His blood turned to ice. Every muscle in his body locked up, and he forgot how to breathe. He turned, and his world ended. It was not a person. It was an executioner. Patricia stood 3 feet away, a vision in navy blue, and the entire massive lobby seemed to shrink until it was just the 3 of them, caught in a terrible silent spotlight. The air was so thick and cold, George could barely draw a breath. Sabrina, still clinging to his arm, felt him go rigid. Her giggling excitement died instantly, replaced by a nervous confusion. She looked from George's frozen, pale face to the new woman who commanded the space. "George," Sabrina whispered, her voice a small, bird-like sound. "George, what's wrong? Who is this?" George couldn't form a word. His tongue was a dry, heavy piece of stone in his mouth. He just stared, his mind screaming, no, 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 no. This was not his wife. This was a monster wearing her face. Patricia? He finally choked out. The name was a question, a plea. Patricia did not answer him. She didn't even acknowledge he had spoken. Her cold, assessing gaze simply moved from his face to the woman on his arm. Her eyes traveled with insulting slowness, down Sabrina's blonde hair, past her terrified, painted-on smile, down the front of her sparkling red dress, and then all the way back up again. When she spoke, her voice was not loud, but it was so clear, so sharp, that it cut through the entire lobby. Every staff member behind the desk, every bellhop by the door, froze and listened. "Sabrina Cohn," Patricia said. It was not a question. It was a statement, a fact. Sabrina's face went from confused to bone white in a single heartbeat. Her hand, which had been clutching George's arm, began to tremble. I'm sorry," Sabrina stammered, looking at George for help. How do you know my name?" "You work in the marketing department at George's firm," Patricia continued, as if she were reading a grocery list. Her voice was flat, bored, and utterly devoid of emotion. "You've been there for 6 months. You handle the social media accounts. You're very active on Instagram. You like red dresses. This is the 3rd one you've bought this month, isn't it?" Sabrina's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with a pure, animal panic. This wasn't a random woman. This wasn't a business rival. This was the wife. And she knew. She knew everything. "George," Sabrina whimpered, her voice cracking. "George, what is this? What's going on?" The sound of his name, spoken by his lover in front of his wife, finally snapped George out of his frozen shock. The ice in his veins turned to a hot, roiling lava of panic and rage. "Patricia," he yelled. His voice was too loud. It cracked in the silent lobby. A few guests checking in at the far end of the desk turned to stare openly. "Stop this. What in the world are you doing? You're supposed to be in Chicago. The seminar." At last, Patricia's icy gaze snapped back to him. The polite, cold mask she had worn for Sabrina disappeared. Now, looking at her husband, her face was filled with a deep, bottomless, and terrifying contempt. "Me?" she asked, raising one perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "I'm working, George. This is my first day." She took a slow, deliberate step toward the reception desk, standing right beside him, but not with him. She was addressing him, but also the entire lobby. Her voice was strong, carrying to every corner. "The seminar in Chicago was the final round of interviews, George. I've been working toward this for over a year. While you were working late, I was studying. While you were on golf trips, I was in meetings." She let that hang in the air for a moment. George's mind spun. "A whole year? I got the job," Patricia said, her voice dropping, as if sharing a secret with everyone in the room. "This job. General manager of the Grand Regent, the flagship hotel of the entire global company." Anna, the receptionist, let out a tiny, strangled gasp. Her eyes were as wide as saucers. She was staring at Patricia with a look of pure, unadulterated awe. Patricia was not done. "I've been in this office for the past 72 hours, George, learning the systems, reviewing the books, and checking the VIP arrivals for my first week." Her eyes narrowed, and she leaned in just a fraction, forcing him to meet her gaze. "So you can imagine my complete and utter surprise," she whispered, the words like tiny, sharp knives, "when I saw a reservation for the presidential suite under your name, using my friends and family employee discount code. A code that is reserved, as the name suggests, for family." She put such a terrible, sharp poison on the word family that George actually flinched. He could feel the eyes of everyone in the lobby burning into him. Anna was staring at her computer screen, her face bright red, pretending to type. The bellhops were suddenly very, very busy with bags that weren't there. He was a show, a free, humiliating circus for the entire staff. "You told me you were at the office closing a deal," Patricia said, her voice getting stronger again. "You told me just last week you were on a golf trip. You are a very, very busy man, George. This had to stop. He had to shut this down." He had to get control back. This was his weekend. He was the man here. He reached out and grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into the fine, expensive fabric of her suit jacket. "Patricia, stop this now," he hissed, his voice a low, furious growl. He tried to pull her away from the desk, to drag her somewhere private. "Not here. Let's go to our room. We can talk about this." Patricia looked down at his hand on her arm. She looked at his thick fingers, white-knuckled, wrinkling her suit. Her face twisted, just for a second, with a look of pure, physical disgust. As if he were a piece of rotting garbage that had just touched her. She didn't pull away. She didn't have to. She just stared at his hand. She stared at it with so much cold, silent hatred that his hand began to feel like it was on fire. He felt suddenly shockingly weak. His grip loosened, and his hand fell uselessly to his side. Patricia gave a small, cold laugh. It was a terrible, ugly sound that echoed in the high-ceilinged room. "Our room?" she repeated, as if he had just said the stupidest, most pathetic thing in the world. "George, you don't have a room here." With the grace of a queen, she turned her body just slightly, addressing the receptionist. Anna, who had been watching the entire exchange with the frozen horror of a mouse watching two snakes, jumped as if she'd been shocked. "Anna." Patricia's voice was all business now, crisp, clear, and dripping with absolute authority. It was the voice of a boss, of a general manager. Anna stammered, Yes, ma'am? Miss Palmer? Ma'am? Anna," Patricia said again, her voice calming the poor girl. "Please cancel Mr. Palmer's reservation. Effective immediately." George's heart stopped. "What? He is," Patricia continued, her eyes sliding back to George, "ineligible for the employee discount." "Yes, ma'am." Anna's fingers flew across the keyboard, a look of pure, frantic relief on her face to finally have a clear, simple order. "Canceling it right now, ma'am." George's panic, which had been a cold stone in his gut, now exploded. This was his weekend. He had this planned. He had promised Sabrina the world. He would not be humiliated by this librarian in a power suit. "What?" he shouted, slamming his free hand down on the smooth, cold marble counter. The sound was like a gunshot. "You can't do that. You can't just cancel it." "Fine." He turned, his face red, his voice shaking with rage. He looked at Anna, not Patricia. He would not give his wife the satisfaction. "I'll pay the full price. I'll pay it. Do you hear me? Put it on the card. I don't need the stupid discount." He shoved his platinum credit card back toward Anna. The young woman flinched, her hands recoiling from the counter as if he had thrown a snake at her. She looked terrified to her new boss. George turned, a sick, triumphant sneer on his face. "See, Patricia? I'm a paying customer. You can't throw me out. I'm paying." He had her. He knew he had her. A hotel, even her hotel, could not refuse a paying customer. He had won. Patricia did not look angry. She did not look flustered. She simply stood there watching him, a look of almost sad pity on her face. She shook her head very slowly. "No," she said. The word was quiet, but it was the loudest, most final sound he had ever heard. It was the sound of a door slamming shut. A steel vault. Coffin. "No." George stared, his mouth hanging open. The word "no" echoed in the vast, silent lobby. It was a small word, but it felt like a brick wall. What do you mean, no?" he sputtered, his voice a weak, confused squeak. The rage he had felt just seconds ago was doused by a cold wave of genuine confusion. "I'm a paying customer. This is a hotel. You have to give me the room." I'm paying. He looked past Patricia, his eyes pleading with the receptionist. Anna. She can't do this, right? I'm paying the full price. Anna, who looked like she wanted to dive under the desk and disappear, refused to meet his eyes. She just stared at her computer screen, her face pale. I don't have to do anything, George, Patricia said, her voice dangerously calm. She stepped away from the counter, putting herself directly in his path. She was no longer just his wife. She was an official, a person in a uniform of power. As the general manager of this hotel, she said, her voice clear and strong for everyone to hear, I have the right and the duty to refuse service to anyone. That is the law. Refuse service? George's mind was spinning. This wasn't happening. On what grounds? Because you're angry at me? That's not legal. I'll sue you. I'll sue this whole hotel. On the grounds, Patricia said, taking another step closer, forcing him to take a step back, that you are causing a public disturbance. She gestured to the open-mouthed guests and the frozen staff. You are shouting. You are harassing my staff. She pointed at Anna, who flinched. And you have already attempted to defraud this company by using an employee discount code you were not entitled to. You are, in fact, a thief. Thief! He roared, his voice cracking. I am not a thief. You are not a guest, Patricia said, her voice like steel. Your reservation is cancelled. You have been asked to leave. You have refused. You are now officially trespassing. Trespassing? It was Sabrina who said it. Her voice was a terrified whisper. Patricia ignored her. Her eyes looked past George, toward the main entrance. Her voice, which had been so strong, became quiet and simple. Frank, please come here. George didn't understand. He looked around, confused. And then he saw him. A mountain was walking toward them. The man was huge, at least 6'5", and built entirely of hard muscle. He wore a perfectly tailored black suit that looked like it was stretched over blocks of granite. A small, curly earpiece was in his ear. He looked like a professional football player, and he was not smiling. He stopped directly beside Patricia, his hands clasped in front of him. He didn't look at George. He only looked at his new boss. Ma'am. His voice was a low, deep rumble. As Frank stood to his left, George felt a presence on his right. He turned his head. A second security guard, smaller but just as serious, had moved quietly to block his path to the elevators. His name tag read Mike. They were on both sides of him. The marble lobby, which had felt so open and full of promise, was now a trap. George's heart was pounding so hard he thought it would break his ribs. He looked at Patricia. He tried to find the woman he knew, the woman who made him breakfast, the woman who rubbed his shoulders when he was stressed. He couldn't find her. There was only this cold, powerful stranger. Patricia, please, he tried, his voice suddenly small. Patty, listen to me. Don't do this. Let's just go. We'll go. Just let us walk out. Patricia looked at him, and for a second, he thought he saw something. But it wasn't softness. It was pity. It was the look a person gives a bug just before they step on it. And then, in the most devastating move of all, she dismissed him completely. She turned her head, her attention shifting from him, as if he were no longer important. Her gaze landed on Sabrina. Sabrina, who had been frozen in terror, let out a small, high-pitched gasp. She was a mouse, and the hawk had just turned its head. Patricia's voice changed. It was no longer angry. It was not even cold. It was bored, as if she were dealing with a small, annoying piece of paperwork. Miss Cohn. Sabrina, she said. Sabrina was trembling, her hands twisting the strap of her small, red purse. I, I, I didn't know, she stammered, tears welling in her eyes. He told me. He said she was, he said. He told you she was at a conference, Patricia finished for her. He told you he was rich and powerful. He told you he was closing a big deal. He lied. Patricia took a step past George, standing directly in front of the younger woman. Sabrina was taller, but in this moment, she seemed to shrink, cowering before Patricia's immense, cold power. He can't help you, Miss Cohn, Patricia said, her voice low and private, but George could hear every word. He can't even help himself. He's not rich. He just uses my money. He's not powerful. He's a liar. Please, Sabrina sobbed, the tears now streaming down her face, leaving black tracks of mascara. I'll just go. I'll go. I would suggest you do that, Patricia said. This is a professional matter now. You are currently associated with a man who just tried to steal from my company. She leaned in, and her voice dropped to a whisper. Your reputation at your firm is your own business, but your presence in my hotel is mine. Leave, now, before I have Frank and Mike escort you out as well. I promise you, it is not a dignified experience. That was it. The threat of being physically touched, of being thrown out just like George was about to be, was the final straw. Sabrina looked at George one last time. Her face was not sad. It was not angry. It was filled with pure, unadulterated disgust. She saw him for what he was, a fraud, a weak, pathetic man who had been caught. He was not her ticket to a better life. He was a dead end. I hate you, she hissed at him. With a final, desperate sob, Sabrina Cohn clutched her small, expensive purse, turned, and ran. She ran. Her high heels clicked wildly on the marble floor. She ran past the frozen bellhops. She ran past the silent, watching doorman. She ran out of the giant glass doors and onto the busy city street, a desperate flash of sparkling red, a flag of her own shame. And just like that, George was alone. He was completely, totally alone. His lover was gone. His escape routes were blocked by 2 security guards. And his wife stood before him like a judge. In that moment, with nothing left to lose, his panic and his shame boiled over into one final, desperate burst of pure, blind rage. You, he roared, jabbing a finger at his wife. His voice was a shredded, ugly sound. You think this is funny? You think you're so smart? You're crazy, Patricia. You're a crazy, jealous woman. You'll regret this. He was shouting at the top of his lungs. The entire lobby was staring. You're fired, he screamed, his face turning a dark, blotchy purple. You hear me? You're fired. I'll call your bosses. I'll have your job. You'll be begging me for money in a week. The lobby staff gasped. Frank and Mike tensed, ready to move. Patricia, however, did not flinch. She did not raise her voice. She simply watched his tantrum, his face twisting and his spittle flying, with that same terrible, pitying look. You're firing me? She asked, a small, humorless laugh escaping her lips. From my own job? A job you didn't even know I had? A job I earned while you were busy spending my inheritance on her. She shook her head, as if dealing with a child. Oh, George, you still don't get it, do you? You have no power here. And then she did the one thing he never could have expected. She turned her back on him. She turned away from his red, screaming face and faced her staff. Anna was pale behind the desk. The bellhops were frozen in place. The concierge's mouth was hanging open. Patricia's voice became loud, clear, and full of command. It was the voice of a true general manager. Everyone, please pay attention. Every eye in the lobby snapped to her. She had their complete, undivided attention. "This is a lesson in hotel policy," she announced, her voice ringing with authority. "We are a 5-star establishment. We pride ourselves on luxury, service, and, above all, integrity." She turned, and with one long, steady, perfectly manicured finger, she pointed directly at her husband's chest. "This man, George Palmer, is my husband," she said. The staff let out a collective, sharp gasp. "And he tried to steal from this company," she continued, her voice like ice. "He used an employee discount code he was not entitled to. He lied to my staff. He did this in order to bring a woman who was not his wife into our finest suite. He has lied to me, and he has tried to defraud this hotel." George was speechless. His mouth was open, but no sound was coming out. His mind was blank with white-hot shame. Thief. She had called him a thief. In front of everyone. Patricia dropped her hand. "As of this moment, Mr. Palmer is blacklisted." She looked at Anna, who was watching her with a look of pure, heroic worship. "Anna, you will add his name and his photograph to the do not admit list. This ban is global. He is not to be allowed in any of our company's hotels, anywhere in the world. Am I clear?" "Yes, ma'am," Anna said, her voice strong and clear. She was already typing. "Good," Patricia said. She then looked at the two men beside her. "Frank, this man is trespassing. Please show Mr. Palmer the exit." George was stunned. He was numb. He was so humiliated that his body couldn't even move. "Wait," he whispered, a last, pathetic plea. "Patricia, please, don't." But it was too late. The time for talk was over. Frank stepped in front of him. "Sir," the big man rumbled, his voice not unkind, but absolutely final. "You need to leave. Now. Get your hands off me." George snarled, his body tensing, his fists clenching. That was the last mistake he would make. The second he tensed, Frank and Mike moved. It was fast. It was professional. It was not a fight. It was a removal. Frank grabbed George's left arm, his grip like a steel trap, and spun him around. Mike seized his right arm. They pinned both of his arms behind his back in a hold so tight, he couldn't even struggle. "Get off me!" he shrieked, his voice high and thin. "You can't do this." "We can, sir," Frank grunted, and with Mike's help, they lifted him. George's expensive, Italian leather-soled shoes left the polished marble floor. He was being carried, like a child, like a piece of luggage. "Put me down," he screamed, kicking his legs uselessly in the air. "Do you know who I am? I'll have your jobs. I'll have all your jobs." "Yeah," Frank said, not even breathing hard as he and Mike began to carry him at a brisk walk toward the front doors. "You're the trespasser." They carried him, past the beautiful 20-foot-tall flower display, past the concierge desk, where the concierge was already on the phone, his back turned, past a new group of wealthy, older guests who were checking in. Their mouths were open in absolute shock. A woman in pearls clutched her husband's arm. George was a spectacle. He was a piece of trash being taken out. He was screaming, but the words didn't make sense anymore. It was just noise. The doorman, seeing them approach, opened both of the giant glass doors wide. He didn't even blink. His face was a perfect mask of professional neutrality, as if men were carried out of his lobby screaming every single day. Frank and Mike did not slow down. They walked right through the open doors and onto the wide, concrete landing at the top of the steps. And then, with a coordinated, powerful 1, 2, 3, they threw him. George sailed through the air for a single terrible second. He wasn't ready. He couldn't get his hands out to break his fall. He landed, hard, on the rough concrete sidewalk at the bottom of the steps. A sharp, searing, blinding pain shot up from his knee. He heard, and felt, the unmistakable, expensive RRRIP of his $2,000 suit pants tearing open. He gasped, the wind knocked out of him. He was dirty. He was on his hands and knees on a public sidewalk. He heard the heavy thud of the giant glass doors swinging shut behind him. He was out. She was in. George lay on the rough, dirty concrete for a long moment. The world was a spinning, gray blur. The only thing he could feel was a sharp, searing fire in his left knee. He looked down. His best $2,000 suit, the one he wore to feel powerful, was ripped open from knee to thigh. Dark red blood was already seeping through the fine gray wool, mixing with the city grime. He could hear people. A woman's high-pitched laugh from a passing taxi. A man who grunted, drunk, probably, as he walked around him. He was a piece of trash on the sidewalk. A joke. The pain in his knee, the sting of the pavement on his palms, the deep, aching throb of his humiliation. It all melted together and hardened into something new. Rage. Pure, black, undiluted hatred. She had not just embarrassed him. She had destroyed him. She had taken his dignity and torn it to shreds in front of everyone. She's crazy, he wheezed, the air struggling to get into his lungs. He was going to destroy her. He was going to sue her. He was going to sue this entire hotel, from the doorman to the new general manager. He would own this place. He would fire her himself. She may have won this little battle, but he would win the war. He gritted his teeth, pushing himself up into a sitting position, his back against the cold stone wall of the hotel. He was a mess. His hands were scraped raw. But he had his phone. He still had his power. He fumbled in his jacket pocket, his hands shaking so badly he almost dropped it. He pulled out his phone. He would call his lawyer. He would call. The screen was already lit up. It was buzzing, a silent vibration against his palm. A wall of notifications had just come through, all at once, as if the world had been waiting for him to be thrown onto the street. His eyes tried to focus on the screen. Message 1, a bank alert. Charge attempt. The Grand Regent, $500. Reason, cancellation and disturbance fee. Underneath it, in bright red letters, payment declined. Card over limit. He stared at it. Declined? That was impossible. He had thousands in credit. Unless he swiped to the next notification. Charge. The Grand Regent, $500. Checking account. She must have had his other card on file. The debit card. He opened his banking app, his heart starting to pound a new, sick rhythm. He looked at his checking account balance. Balance. Minus $142.50. Negative. The $500 charge had gone through, emptying his account and pushing him into the red. His credit card was maxed out. His checking account was empty. He was, at this exact moment, completely and totally broke. He couldn't even afford a taxi to get home. The realization hit him like a physical blow. She knew. She knew he was broke. She knew he was living paycheck to paycheck, using her good credit and her inheritance to fund his flashy, empty lifestyle. She hadn't just thrown him out. She had stranded him. Message 2, an email. It was at the top of his inbox. The sender was a name he had never seen before. Robert Shaw Esq. The subject line was 6 cold, final words. Divorce papers Palmer versus Palmer. His thumb, trembling so hard he could barely control it, tapped the email. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a warning. It was a done deal. Attached was a 50-page PDF. He opened it. He didn't read all of it. He didn't have to. His eyes just scanned the summary on the first page. Words jumped out at him. Irreconcilable differences. Adultery. Gross misappropriation of marital assets. And then the terms. As the house at 45 Willow Creek was purchased in full by Patricia Palmer using funds from her sole and separate inheritance prior to the marriage. As the investment portfolio was funded entirely by said inheritance. As the two vehicles, a BMW 7 Series and a Range Rover, are both leased in Ms. Palmer's name, Mr. Palmer is entitled to nothing. She was keeping the house. She was keeping the investments. She was keeping the cars. He was being left with his clothes and his own significant personal debt. The email included a small, attached zip file. He opened it. It was a folder full of hotel receipts, dinners, credit card statements, text messages, and photographs. Photos of him and Sabrina. Photos of him and a woman from his office a year ago. Photos he didn't even know existed. A forensic accountant had tracked everything. Message 3, a text message. From Sabrina. He opened it. A tiny, pathetic, desperate part of him was hoping for something. An ally. Kind word. Someone else to blame Patricia with. The text was simple and brutal. Don't ever contact me again. I'm blocking you. I'm probably going to be fired because of you. I hate you. He had lost his wife. He had lost his lover. He had lost his money. He had lost his house. He had lost his car. He had lost his dignity. All of it. In less than 10 minutes. The phone slipped from his numb, useless hand. It clattered onto the pavement. The screen staying lit, showing the last, hateful message from Sabrina. He just sat there on the dirty sidewalk, his suit ripped, his knee bleeding. He was nothing. A hollow shell. He heard a sound. Or maybe he just felt it. A change in the air. Slowly, his body aching. His soul completely empty. He looked up. She was there. Patricia Palmer. She was standing in the giant glass doorway of the Grand Regent. She was framed by the warm, golden light of the lobby, looking like a figure in a painting. She was not alone. Anna, the receptionist, was standing beside her, holding a clipboard and looking at her with pure adoration. Frank and Mike, the two security guards, stood just behind her, their hands clasped. They were her royal guards. She was not crying. She was not smiling. She was not angry. She just was. She looked calm. She looked strong. She looked, for the first time in 15 years, completely and totally powerful. Her eyes met his across the driveway. She saw him. She saw the ripped suit. She saw the blood on his knee. She saw his phone lying dark on the pavement beside him. She knew he had seen the messages. She knew he finally understood that it was all over. She held his gaze for one long, cold, final second. Then, she gave him one tiny, almost unnoticeable nod. It was not a greeting. It was not a goodbye. It was a dismissal. She was closing a file. She was turning a page. She was done. Patricia Palmer adjusted the cuff of her sharp blue suit jacket. She turned away from the broken man on the sidewalk, a piece of trash from her past. Anna, she said, her voice crisp and clear. Thank you for your help. Now, about that staff meeting at 3 p.m. Let's review the agenda. She turned, and without a single look back, she walked away from the door. Her heels made a sharp, clean, clicking sound on the marble floor. A sound of purpose. A sound of a future. She walked back into her hotel. Upstairs, in the massive general manager's office, Patricia stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows. The view was incredible. She could see the entire city spread out below her, all the cars and all the people, looking as small as ants. She had worked for this. For 15 years, she had worked hard. She had put up with George's ego, his late nights, his complaints that she was boring. She had focused on her career, the one thing he always made fun of. She had found the first hotel receipt 6 months ago. A city she had never been to. A name she didn't know. Then another. And another. She didn't cry. She got busy. She hired Robert Shaw, the most ruthless divorce lawyer in the state. She hired the forensic accountant. She uncovered years of his lies, his stupid spending, his affairs. She learned that his big deals were all failures and that he had been secretly draining her inheritance to impress other people. The betrayal didn't break her, freed her. She poured every ounce of her pain and anger into this one final goal. The GM position at the flagship hotel. She beat out every other candidate. And she set her trap. She knew George. She knew his arrogance. She knew his greed. She knew he would be too stupid to resist using her 50% discount. He had set the trap for himself. All she had to do was be there to spring it. Her new office phone buzzed. She picked it up. "Robert Shaw, ma'am," her new assistant's voice said. "Put him through." "He's on the street, Patricia." Her lawyer's voice was crisp. "The papers are served. The email is sent. He has nothing. He'll sign." Patricia looked down. She could just barely see the tiny, pathetic figure of her husband, still sitting on the curb, his head in his hands. "I know, Robert," she said, a small, real smile touching her lips for the first time in a very long time. "He'll sign. Congratulations, Patricia. You're free." "Yes," she said, taking a sip of her strong, black coffee. "I am." She hung up the phone. She looked at the busy schedule on her desk. It was 3 p.m. She had a staff meeting in 10 minutes. It was time to get to work.
Thank you for listening all the way. Your support means everything. Subscribe, leave a comment with your real name and where you're from, and you might see your shout out in the next story. You never know, the next one might just change your life.